Australia's medicinal marijuana industry is poised to explode. And leading the charge is cannabis entrepreneur Gary MacKenzie, who is the co-founder of Releaf, the first and largest clinic and dispensary franchise in the Asia-Pacific region. It's a very chilled episode 607 of the 13-year-old award-winning Small Business Big Marketing podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of green marketing. I'm your host, Timbo Reid, and I have an insatiable curiosity for uncovering marketing ideas that help businesses exactly like yours to grow. How? Through weekly in-depth conversations with successful business owners. You, infinitely more importantly, are a motivated business owner, ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire it absolutely deserves to be. As per usual, team, there is marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. Big news. Well, big news if you want to attract more customers into your business. Past guest, founder of the Institute of Wow, and most importantly, one of Australia's leading customer attraction experts for small business, John Dwyer, joins me for a webinar. Jot this date down. Put it in your diary. Save the date. That's what they say. Thursday, October 13. In which he'll step you through his proven, highly effective and stupidly inexpensive way to bring in more business. I ran this webinar about 6 months ago, and it was so well attended and John's advice so beautifully received that I've decided to do it one more time. In fact, we'll do it twice on October 13, one at midday and one I think at 7 p.m. at night to cover both ends of the world, if you know what I mean. You can register free over at salesbooster.com.au/Timbo and choose between 7 p.m. and midday, as I said, on October 13. And put aside a good 75 minutes as John gives away a lot of marketing GOLD, which alone is worth the cost of the webinar, which is, by the way, free. So that made no sense at all. The rego link again, salesbooster.com.au/Timbo. Today's guest is a successful entrepreneur and marketing professional with over 25 years of management and CEO experience across technology, direct marketing, outsourcing, digital content, but he has a particular focus on building solid brands. And that's exactly what he's done with the Releaf brand. That's spelled Releaf, FYI. From scratch, building it to the first and largest medicinal marijuana clinic and dispensary in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, as one of Australia's leading cannabis entrepreneurs, Gary has become somewhat of a figurehead in the industry that's just starting to find its feet and gain acceptance amongst a community that is a little bit divided as to its benefits. And that's where my interest lies. How does one start a business in a relatively new industry full of red tape and not everyone is supportive of it being legal? Now, I was hoping this interview would have a greater focus on the business of starting a legal medicinal marijuana business in Australia. However, as you'll hear, Gary is a huge believer in the health benefits of his product. So he talks quite a bit about that, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, as you've heard me rattle on over the years about the fact that the best marketing is a great product. And as a business owner, hey, we got to love our product, and Gary does that. Let's go and meet Releaf founder Gary MacKenzie. Gary, if this was the Joe Rogan Experience, the Tim Ferriss podcast, the Bill Maher podcast, you and I'd be sharing a virtual joint at this point in time. But I imagine that's not the image that you want to create for Releaf.
Look, it's not necessarily. Look, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a joint. It's more to do with the fact that every legislation around the world's at a different time phase, and Australia is still in that medical cannabis evolution. So we haven't moved into that full lifestyle, adult use industry like you see in Canada and, in half of the states now. So it's probably just more about the temperature of what you can say about cannabis. In Australia, the TGA have had guidelines around cannabis, so you've got to be careful. You can't promote products, and that's to protect the consumer from, supposedly from having an issue. But look, I suppose one of my bugbears around cannabis is it right from the beginning, it's been made a Schedule 8 medicine, so it's put in the same category as opiates. So opiates, as we know, if you take too many of them, you can overdose and die. Whereas cannabis is a safe, drug. You can have as much of it as you want. You're not going to overdose. So that's probably one of the things that holds the industry back a little bit, because it is very much controlled through that medical environment. But look, at the same time, with a brand new industry starting, I suppose there needs to be some level of scrutiny and just to make sure things don't go berserk. But I've seen Thailand go the opposite way in the last 3 months, and it's an interesting model to watch where it's really gone from 0 to 10 in 12 weeks and hasn't necessarily done any damage to society, which obviously people will say it does. But cannabis is a safe medicine, I think, and it's a lifestyle choice for a lot of people over alcohol, and it does give people an alternative to pain, sleep, and other medications.
So, Gary, you've got a marketing, business, entrepreneurial background in direct sales mainly. How did you get involved in the medicinal marijuana industry?
Oh, look, back in the day, I originally used to knock on doors. I'm actually an audio engineer as well, so I worked heavily in the music industry for a number of years, and then
more.
Yeah, so when I was young, I used to walk around and knock on doors for some extra money, and then that's sort of how I got involved with MTV back in the day, and pay TV launched in Australia back in the mid-90s, and because of probably my background as an audio engineer and working in the music industry, and then having a business sort of acumen as well, I sort of involved in marketing and direct marketing, and that's probably helped us a lot with Releaf. But look, I was living and working in Asia predominantly the last sort of 15 years before I got involved in cannabis. Back around 5 years ago, I had found out I had kidney cancer, and I had my right kidney removed. And that's when I suppose, was given opiates at the time. I was in chronic pain and got a lot of nerve pain. I had my stomach completely cut open a couple of times, and losing an organ as well is quite a bit of pain associated. So, I was prescribed, an abundance of opiates really, and it doesn't take very long for a patient to become, mentally and physically addicted to opiates. So, whether you're mentally strong enough to stop taking them, sometimes your body tells you you can't because you've been on them for a certain period. So it's not safe just to automatically stop opiates. But at the time, I was sort of starting to get a lot of side effects from the opiates. And they slow you down, you put on weight. There's a lot of other, issues with opiates as well. And my son said, look, why don't you try medical cannabis? It had been approved in 2016 in Australia. And
That long ago?
Yeah, so that's a lot of people don't realise that. But, the government passed legislation on medicinal cannabis back in 2016, so, 6 years ago now. And it's taken this long for the industry to mature. So in that first 12 months, it was
it's hardly matured.
Yeah, look, I suppose from my position, I see, because I've seen it from nothing to growing, I have seen a lot of sort of movement. But I think in that first 12 months after cannabis was approved in this country, there was only 20 odd people who were able to access it. So I think Greg Hunt at the time, the health minister, had to actually sign the application. That's how strict it was. And that's sort of how I got involved in the industry, because I tried to access medical cannabis legally. It took me a while to find a doctor, and then I eventually did find a doctor that would do the application, but she told me at the time it would take quite a few months, and she couldn't give me any guarantees that it was going to get approved. I was going to be able to access it. So that was, I suppose, where some of those early ideas came from, creating a business to make it, more simpler for people to remove the stigma and create patient access to the medicines.
So Releaf is absolutely a solution to a personal problem that you had, as opposed to you just saw a business opportunity in what is going to be a burgeoning industry.
Yeah, look, definitely. Look, I am a patient as well as a business owner in the industry. My other business partner, Scott McDonald, he has 2 kids with cerebral palsy, and one of his reasons for wanting to get involved in the industry, he spoke to me about it 5 years ago, sort of where it all started. He wanted to open up a medical cannabis clinic to give better access. His kids were cerebral palsy, suffer from a lot of seizures and fits and, muscle cramps and all that sort of things. So cannabis can be very helpful in some cases there. But, so we got involved more probably looking at from a patient perspective. And then I realised from a business side, we really needed all these licenses to be able to operate properly. Cannabis is very regulated, so right from import to export to cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, it's all licensed, all these different licenses.
Just tell me about that mindset, Gary, because, that fascinates me. I imagine the red tape and the bureaucracy of setting up a business like Releaf would be enormous. So back in, you launch it in 2017. You clearly had the idea prior to that. Personally, if it was me, and I'd quite like the idea of owning a medicinal marijuana business. However, my immediate reaction is I just see hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. I see government nonsense. I just see a whole lot of red tape. What was your mindset around that? Do you love that stuff?
It was only when I started looking into the industry and realised the amount of licenses you would really need to be able to vertically integrate and operate, as a company that it was commercially viable, because doctors, are well-paid, professional services that take the majority of clinic revenues. So once you open a clinic, anyone can open a clinic in Australia. It's a deregulated industry, but to get access to doctors, not easy. They also take the lion's share of the revenues. So that's when I started looking into the pharmacy world, partnered with some pharmacists, and then the rest is sort of history. And then we started applying for cultivation, manufacturing, research, import, export licenses across various aspects of our group. And we started surrounding ourselves with a lot of medical people. So, I started recruiting professors and scientists and doctors and pharmacists to sort of give me that expertise, which I didn't have because I'd never worked in the medical industry before. So I approached it probably more from a commercial perspective, looking at how we could make money and how we could operate in that regulatory environment. And it sort of just organically evolved over, a 3-year period. And today we're the only cannabis franchise group in the whole of Asia Pacific, and we're able to operate that way because we have access to wholesale cannabis, through our own means and also through third-party suppliers. We considerably, sort of working across every aspect of the industry now. Whether we don't actually grow ourselves, we contract out farms to do that for us, or we import. But, we're doing a lot of research as well.
Is there a reason you don't grow yourself? Because I remember speaking to the owner of Gelato Messina, and he owns a lot of the supply chain. You've got strawberry farm, hazelnut farm, dairy farm. He's providing it's control, it's quality control, it's all that kind of stuff. You don't have an interest in owning more of the supply chain? Yeah,
look, I'm not an agricultural farmer or come from that sort of industry, and it doesn't make sense for me to sort of learn all about that. It's very risky to farm, in any agricultural business. So because you've got the elements that can change things, or if you're growing indoors,
mate, you grow weed indoors.
Yeah, so look, we have a combination of cannabis that's grown indoors and outdoors. There's some patients have a preference over organic soil-grown cannabis versus hydroponic. So there's in the world now there's thousands of different strains, but they all originated from natural plants. So they're called landrace strains, and Australia has our own sort of claim on a strain called Mullumbimby Madness, which comes from up around the sort of Byron Bay, Nimbin, Mullumbimby area, but around the world, you've got strains from Nepal and South Africa and Central Asia. There's a lot of, so that's where cannabis has evolved from, these natural plants, and then people have started breeding them indoors and outdoors to create all the strains that we have today.
Tell me about the Releaf clinic that exists today, because in 2017 it was launched, and now you've got about 5 around Australia. Is that right? And describe the typical experience.
Yes, it's very similar to a normal medical patient experience. They come in the clinic, sit in reception, wait for the doctor to come and tell them to come in. And look, it's cannabis has been set up as a medicine in Australia. So it's a scheduled medicine. CBD is Schedule 4. All the THC products are Schedule 8. So there's an onus on the doctor to make sure that it's, for the patient. They should have probably had a look at previous history of other medicines. There's a lot of people that may have taken opiates and would come off opiates onto cannabis. There's a...
Gaz, if we could keep it business-wise, I'm really interested in kind of the customer experience and, what it's like. Because there'd be a lot of people listening who aren't in this world, who aren't in this space, who have probably might not have ever even seen marijuana?
For sure. Look, Relief really has taken that, I suppose, that typical medical experience for a patient to come in, feel like they're in a normal medical centre with no stigma, and 100% of people there for cannabis are not coming here for colds and flus and COVID and stuff. So one of the differences, doctors may only see 20 patients a day versus 50 or 60 patients a day in a traditional medical centre where they're treating people for colds, flus and COVID. So cannabis is more about pain, sleep and anxiety. And they're probably the three main things we prescribe for. And yeah, from a patient experience, they're coming in, seeing a doctor, or they're having a consultation over telehealth. So we can offer telehealth services across the country, and then face-to-face is in set locations. And we have a few sites in Victoria and 3 active sites at the moment in Queensland, and we're building others at the moment. But look, Relief, clinic and pharmacy are connected. It's sort of a clinic and dispensary group. And we provide patient access to clinical medicines that are in that cannabis sector. And I think we have over 150 SKUs of flower and a number of different oils and tablets on the market that are all available via doctors if the doctor thinks that you should be prescribed. But look, it's very regulated. So sometimes if the patient might have to wait for the TGA approval. We run an authorised prescriber program at Relief. So once our doctors have seen 30-odd patients, they can be approved under an ethics committee to become an authorised prescriber, which streamlines that patient experience. So experience in St Kilda, where we're established, we've been going here for quite a few years now. A patient will come in, see a doctor, and be able to leave with a prescription that day if the doctor deems fit that they should be given that medicine. So yeah, so it's no different to any medical pharmacy experience. You're going and seeing the doctor, going to the pharmacy and getting your script filled and leaving.
Have you seen an advantage or a benefit in being first to market?
Well, definitely, because we obviously are that cannabis franchise group that I suppose are on the high street, so people can see our brand, similar to other high street brands. We're in Hastings Street, Noosa, we're in Caloundra, in Sunshine Coast, we're in Brisbane. We're in Ackland Street, St Kilda. We're moving into most of the, so there's 25 sort of top high streets in Australia that you'll see us in over the next 12 months.
Well, that's an interesting marketing strategy in itself. And I know marketing is difficult for in this industry, which I want to talk about shortly. But just as a store location, geez, mate, you haven't been shy. I mean, I live up in Noosa, and Hastings Street must be one of the most expensive rentals in Australia in terms of a shopping strip. As would, Ackland Street, St Kilda. Yeah, this is a strategy around positioning Releaf as a premium brand. It's about foot traffic, because you could quite easily be in secondary streets.
Yeah, look, I think being on the high street attracts, foot traffic. So it's a patient lead generator. People come in and find out what Releaf is about in the pharmacy, and then if they want to know more, they can come and see a doctor. So part of that lead generation strategy to get the brand out there, Hastings Street's, it was chosen purely for that reason. A lot of people obviously go for holidays up in Noosa, and you've got a good cross-section of Australia, visiting. Yeah, so Hastings Street, Noosa, I suppose it's a bit of an ad for us at the same time. But look, being on the high street, does sort of normalise cannabis a little bit too. It's not like it's this foreign thing. It's, we see it as a safe alternative to opiates and Xanax and Prozac and some other, sort of Western medicines.
Yeah, well, no doubt. What's been the biggest frustration so far, Gary, in bringing Releaf to market from a business perspective? Probably
just the time taken to do things like cannabis. Normal industries, you can sort of often forecast how long it takes to get things done. Cannabis can take 3-4 times as long. The goalposts can get shifted on a regular basis by regulators. So it's not easy from, the cultivation side all the way through to prescribing. There's a lot of extra red tape, a lot of extra processes and procedures around cannabis that other medicines aren't privy to. So, yeah, I think it's unfairly picked on. It's about time that, I think the public...
Do you play an advocate role?
Look, I try to be a bit of a thought leader in sort of advising from a business perspective on what's happening in the industry, things like LinkedIn and stuff. But look, the cannabis itself, you can't really talk about it in this country. It'd be like talking about antibiotics, because it's a scheduled medicine, so you're not allowed to advertise it. So, the public, there's obviously a wealth of information about medicinal cannabis and research and everything all online that people can search on Google, but you're not allowed to sort of share that information, readily because it's illegal in this country. There's guidelines around what you can say and do around cannabis. So the public doesn't really get a chance.
Let's talk marketing. And I know you can't talk marketing, but sort of in a way we already have. I mean, number one, you've got you've built a brand. So you've established Releaf as a brand, a great visual brand. There's a customer experience. There's a beautiful consistency. I've been to 2 of your stores. There's a consistency around that. So, from a marketing perspective, you can do that. You can't, and you've got great locations. So you've got foot traffic. You can't advertise. You've got a website, but again, you can't talk about product.
No, look, we can talk about that we're medicinal cannabis prescribers. So, we rank high on Google for that. We get a lot of traffic. We'll have 25,000, views a month on our website. So that grows every month. So yes, there's a big patient demand out there. And we already have like 18,000 patients in our books now, which often they'll tell their friend or their family. So there's a lot of word of mouth. But yeah, being on the high street, just general word of mouth. And people getting good results from the medicines that they're taking. There's positive stories out there. They're not negative ones. And we find that cannabis, is a lifestyle choice for people too. It's a lot healthier alternative than smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol.
Let's just talk pricing. Now, I don't know what the ratio is, but buying weed illegally versus buying it from a dispensary like Releaf, I'm going to say it's like you guys buying it legally is probably 3 times more expensive. I suppose it depends on where you buy it illegally. But is that pricing strategy about, is there big margin there? Or are you just paying a whole lot more for it than the illegal bloke who's growing it himself? And is there also a deterrent component in your pricing to stop, just the stoners coming in and wanting to restock?
Yeah, look, we've had a look at, I suppose, what consumers would pay for, black market. People are going to go, we call them lifestyle patients, where they might self-medicate for a long time on the street. They'll go and they'll have their friends that they'll get it from. And the prices that they pay for, so I suppose premium cannabis, we've sort of adjusted our prices now to just be alongside of that. So you can actually get a script of medicinal cannabis for the same price as what you're going to get that for on the street, and it's legal.
What would that price be? Look,
it really ranges. It depends on the brands. Some of the third-party Canadian brands can be as expensive as sort of $20 a gram. We probably prescribe our Releaf flowers at around $13 a gram. So it's very reasonable, really, when, a lot of people are buying cannabis on the street for $25. They don't know what's in it. Might have pesticides. It could have heavy metals in it or anything. So that's where medicinal cannabis from a flower perspective is, we believe it's a much safer, better alternative to get it legally than to get it illegally if you're going to use it to self-medicate for sleep or anxiety.
I notice Snoop Dogg and Mike Tyson have their own medicinal marijuana brands. I imagine that's going to be quite a trend going forward where, some of these public figures, even Joe Rogan, I heard him talk about it recently where he's been hit up multiple times by various entrepreneurs wanting them to attach his name to, white label a strand. Do you think that'll happen in Australia? And who do you think it would be?
Yeah, look, that celebrity cannabis thing is a thing for people that follow those individuals, I suppose. Look, again, that's probably more of a marketing sort of strategy that happens more in the US. You don't see a lot of that happening here. But in the future, I can see, sports, CBD for sports. There could be sports players, sort of recommending it for, it's heavily used. CBD, which is, the opposite to the THC in the plant, which is not psychoactive. That's more going to be used for brain injuries or head injuries in contact sports. It's already used in the UFC and boxing and stuff to protect people's brains. It's an anti-inflammatory. So, it's used a lot for arthritis and those sort of things. And look, cannabis is not for everyone, but a lot of patients that try it will find that they're going to get better just as good, if not better, results than what they've been taking. So that's why people end up staying on it, and it's natural. Makes them they feel better on it than some of these other drugs.
Innovation in the industry, Gary, I noticed that one of your posts on LinkedIn only in the last couple of days was talking about cannabis drinks, beverages. That seems to be something that's coming out of the States. Is it an innovative industry, and what kind of innovation are you seeing globally?
Yeah, look, I think beverages is sort of that medium that may connect cannabis to the mainstream. Like, not everyone's going to ever smoke cannabis or vape it or, even take oils, but because of that social aspect, people are very used to socialising through drinks and beverages. And, and I think as the industry starts to look at that, you'll see an exodus of people moving away from alcohol and trying some of these terpene-infused drinks. The terpenes in cannabis will determine how you feel in that cannabis. So it's understanding what's in the particular strain. Some cannabis strains will wake you up and make you feel more energetic. Some cannabis strains will relax you and make you tired. So, yeah, so look, with our brand Malt Cafe, we've launched a non-alcoholic bar predominantly. We have limited alcohol. And that bar cafe is really focused on the terpene profiles of strains, and we've created our own beverage line of drinks that go along with that.
What is Malt Cafe? Is that something that's part of the Releaf clinic, or is that a separate brand?
No, it's a completely separate business. It's more like, I suppose, a sister business in a way. The clinics and dispensaries is a medical group. Malt Cafe is a lifestyle brand. So Mull, Australian slang for weed, I suppose. Mull is a brand that focuses on, has a textile division. We're developing a hemp clothing line. We're also looking at creating, surf skate cannabis clothing type stores, with cannabis cultures, sort of targeting outdoor sports like surfing, which is predominantly Australian. So Mull's are very much an Australian brand.
Where would I see the Mull brand right now in Australia?
Look, it's only just launched in St Kilda. We've just finished building a bar and cafe in St Kilda, and we're about to launch a clothing line in the next few months. So it has a music division also, where we're also releasing music around cannabis strains. So similar to like you have your Joe Rogan or Mike Tyson or Snoop Dogg strains, we might have a particular strain that'll go along with a particular music release that we'll do. So we're looking at other markets outside Australia. We're not just operating here in Australia. We're looking at California. We've set up in the UK.
But I'm not going to be able to go in there. No one's going to be able to walk into a Malt Cafe and say, give us a drink of THC, weed with THC in it.
In America, they could. Like some of the legislations in America, not in Australia.
So it's a global idea, Mull. The Mull brand.
Look, in Australia, we can still do terpene-infused drinks. So we can use botanicals. We can, there's myrcene in mangoes, there's limonene in lemons. So a lot of the cannabinoids that are in cannabis, people are consuming daily in their normal diet. So one of the reasons cannabis is healthy is because of that.
As I hear you talk about the Mull brand, I interviewed Dare Jennings of Mambo and Deus Ex Machina recently, and it was a really interesting conversation because he's built two amazing Australian brands around culture, not around. He's anything but literal Dare, but he loves motorbikes, he loves music, he loves surfing, and he loves t-shirts. And he just creates those two brands have been created around. Yeah, look, if you think Mull, think Australian for cannabis. Mull is Australian cannabis company, and we've had our brand designed by a fairly high market sort of designer called Gabriel Tick, who was behind Vice. He's an American from New York, and he's put a lot of work, creative sort of expertise into the brand. So that's significant. Are you just rolling in dough, Gaz? No, we were lucky with Gabriel. We actually met his brother-in-law was an SAS soldier, talking out of school a little bit, and was here as a patient, and that's sort of how we met Gabriel. And he just sort of lives locally in St Kilda. But yeah, Mull is a lifestyle brand that is focused on fashion, music, culture, and cannabis. And as we sort of bring our Australian brand into the US. Malt Cafe will feature a lot of the Australian cultivars that you can't get in America. So, cannabis is grown in Australia, and we have an export license. So we're able to sort of look at sort of nurturing that brand globally. And as our legislation catches up here, eventually, we see Malt Cafe as a dispensary, long term as sort of full adult use sort of progresses here in Australia. But that's probably still a good 5 years away, I think. Just going back to, what was the designer's name out in New York? Gabriel
Gabriel Tick, he just did the recent Elvis video. He did last year. He did a Tom Petty video, and he does a lot of Rihanna's videos and stuff. So yeah, he's a very creative, talented young guy.
It must be very exciting to work with a designer of that caliber. I mean, at the end of the day, you're a small business owner. There's many small business owners listening to this podcast, and I bang on about the power of building a brand, a visual brand, just a very strong brand. What's it been like to work with someone like Gabriel, and how does he like to work? Is he just say, hey, leave me, or you got to give him a really tight brief?
Oh, look, he probably took my vision and then created a style guide around our Mel brand. So yes, he was able to sort of, I suppose, get what was in my head and then put it into a brand. And Mel's very much targeting that late 70s culture. So 1978 is actually the year that Mel's sort of, situated at, from a branding perspective. So we've really looked at what was happening in Australia in the 70s around Mullumbimby. The story of Mullumbimby, there's a bit of folklore around it, but I suppose that hippie commune has sort of, evolved around Nimbin in the late 60s, something to do with cannabis in that area. Now, whether or not that was a plant that's been growing in Australia for 10,000 years, or whether someone's brought it over from Thailand or something, who knows? But, we sort of see Mullumbimby Madness, which is that Australian strain, as Australia's sort of plant. And that's where the word mull originated from. And, you got any mull or mull up. So Mullum or Mullumbimby has sort of, got part of that culture of our brand, and it's close to the beach and water. So you've got that surf culture tied in with it as well.
It's a really interesting industry in which you operate from a understanding your user's point of view, because I was in Mullumbimby recently, and on one side of the road, there's the Hessian wearing hippies that have always been there and define what Mullumbimby has been about historically. And then on the other side of the road, literally, there is a brand new Range Rover worth probably $250,000 rolling down the road. Now, I would probably say both those people would be customers of Releaf, or users at least of weed. So how do you, I mean, any business can have more than one avatar, one ideal client, but how do you understand your ideal user when they are so varied?
Yeah, look, I think cannabis is for everyone. So it's just like, it has such a diverse...
No doubt, but that creates a marketing challenge.
It does and it doesn't. I suppose cannabis brings people together. You could have 15, 20 people, or you could have, someone working as a lawyer talking to, like someone that works on the roads, and their commonality is cannabis. So cannabis brings people together. I think they all think about it in a similar way on how it makes them feel. It's quite a unique medicine or, plant, being used as a medicine. It makes you feel good as well. And that's, I suppose that's why people gravitate towards cannabis as a drug as well, or, as a medicine, whatever you want to call it. But look, at the end of the day, it's a natural plant that has been around for 10,000 years. Society, hasn't just been introduced to it recently. It's been part of society for a long time.
I interviewed a fellow 3 years ago now, Jay Bayer. He wrote a book. He's a great marketer out of the States. He wrote a book called Hug Your Haters, which was all about the best feedback, the best market research you can ever do is getting negative feedback and responding to it in a mature way. I imagine there'd be sectors of the community that put a lot of heat on you personally as the owner of a medicinal marijuana clinic, and maybe just coming in off the street.
I find society are very open-minded to medicinal cannabis. They think it's a good thing. I don't think you get too many naysayers. But back in the early days, we did have a few media people trying to sort of trip us up and write stories sort of in a negative way. But
it's a cheap headline, mate.
Yeah, but I found the general public stood up for us, and and the narrative around negative cannabis articles usually get fleshed out quickly by the public. And I find these days there's a lot more positive stories about it than the negative ones, which I've seen evolve in the last sort of 3 or 4 years. So look, Australia's still got a long way to go, but I do think it's heading in the right direction, and cannabis is here to stay. It'll be part of society forever now.
Let's talk competition, Gary. I imagine where you are at the moment and where the industry is at the moment in Australia, you'd probably welcome competition, because it can only raise the bar and raise awareness?
No, I agree. Look, it's like any high street brand. Like, look at supermarket brands like Coles and Woolworths. I mean, you have a choice, and people will probably go to both. I think it normalises, an industry when you have more than one. So, yeah, we'd welcome to see other cannabis businesses alike to us sort of pop up. I think, we've got that early mover advantage and we're sort of rolling out pretty aggressively now, but I think it could only benefit the country if you see other competitors sort of move in, and look, it's not an easy business by all means because of all the red tape and regulatory, but, there's obviously a lot of businesses in that manufacturing cultivation side of the industry. There's not a lot yet in the retail side of the industry. We started at the retail end, which is probably that more difficult consumer end, but now we're sort of working our way back into more of a vertically integrated model. And we've just partnered with a big group in the US called Cookies. Cookies are one of probably the largest cannabis company in the world now. They control a lot of the cannabis genetics. They have over 46 dispensaries now in the US. So we're putting Cookies corners into our Releaf dispensaries, and we're starting to prescribe their strains as well. So that'll all come between now and Christmas. So there's a lot of genuine interest out in the public about our Cookies relationship and rollout that's going to happen fairly soon.
So strategic partnerships for you, again, as a category that can't do much overt marketing, just aligning yourself with brands like Cookies is a very powerful move.
By us launching Mull alongside Cookies as a premium brand, I mean, it will position our brands as well. So yeah, and look, we the Cookies guys in the States, they're great to deal with. They've got a lot of experience. They've been growing some of the best cannabis in the world, and they're known for that. So as a therapeutic product, I think the Cookies strains will be very well received by the Australian public once the doctors start prescribing them.
Why have you gone down the franchise path and so early? I suppose, it's good to make a decision up front so you know the business model, but, you're actively seeking franchisees and that's your business model. Why?
I think from a capital intensive perspective, if you wanted to have a wholly owned group, it obviously, millions and millions of dollars to build out something like that. So franchising has enabled us to scale the business earlier than would normally happen. And, they're probably for those reasons and look, the demand out there, we've had over 1,000, sort of inquiries just in the last sort of 6 months for people to want to buy franchises. A lot of people think they can buy a dispensary, which you can't. You have to be a pharmacist, own a pharmacy in Australia. So there's a few sort of limitations around who can work in the industry. It's more of a medical industry in Australia, so it's really targeting doctors and pharmacists. But, the medical industry has been deregulated, so you can enter the market and own a medical centre without being a doctor. It's just doctors need to work in those clinics to prescribe. So there is opportunities for everyone to move into the brand. I mean, we have a turnkey solution that provides that product supply chain, patients, and everything in between. So, yeah, having a franchise as a turnkey solution, we've also now garnered a lot of interest in countries like Thailand and Malaysia. We actually have, I suppose, a bit of a jewel in the crown in our group too, which I haven't talked about. We own the International College of Cannabinoid Medicine. We've set up a medical and education group within our overall arching group, and that's run by Professor Kylie O'Brien. That has sort of over 50 videos and lectures and white papers around cannabis and research, and we use that to train doctors and pharmacists. In Australia right today, there's still no, I suppose, education for medical people, which seems a bit strange after it was approved 6 years ago, but still today, I don't think there's anything in the medical curriculums about the benefits of cannabis, which probably, is one of the things that'll help normalise it through the medical community. But, they're things that we haven't seen eventuate. So for that reason, we set up our own college. We set that up over in London, and we've got a small team in London, and we aggregate doctors and lecturers and train doctors and pharmacists on a global basis now. But in Australia, that ICCM, International College of Cannabinoid Medicine, helps us, I suppose, bring industry people through. One of the biggest barriers to entry for medical people is they don't understand cannabis, they don't know how to dose it or prescribe it. So us having that pathway of education for doctors and pharmacists can help set that industry going, which if you didn't have a franchise group, you wouldn't attract sort of that wider audience either. So Yeah, so it's sort of the franchising for us, I suppose, has enabled us to sort of connect with doctors, pharmacists, entrepreneurs, and patients, and they all sort of connect with each other.
I imagine the biggest threat to Releaf growing into the future is if GPs nationally develop an understanding and can start prescribing cannabis, if chemists, pharmacies, just your general pharmacy can start dispensing it, what role Releaf?
Well, they already can now. Doctors can already, any doctor in Australia, if you're a GP, can prescribe cannabis, but there's a pathway to do it. Because of the stigma and because of the uneducated doctor that doesn't understand it, they don't. But look, for us as a pharmacy group, we're like McDonald's. You can only get a Big Mac from McDonald's. You can only get Releaf products from Releaf pharmacies. So any doctor in Australia can write prescriptions for us, but our medicine efficacy is still only available at our dispensaries or our pharmacies because we are a franchise group. So we're sort of in a way protected by the legislation through the Franchise Code of Conduct by having those branded products only available at our pharmacies. And to get Releaf products, you can see any doctor in Australia, but you can only pick up those products through our pharmacies. So that sort of protects us. We're also, I suppose, evolving, that lifestyle patient, that might come to and see a doctor where they have issues sleeping or use it for anxiety and being able to get medical cannabis through Releaf. We try to focus on very high quality flower at the right prices so they're not sort of discriminated against and there's a reason to come and get it medically over not getting it. I think a lot of the anxiety created around cannabis in this country is because it's still illegal. And, if you can get it legally, you don't have that fear of, I'm doing something wrong. But yeah, look, there's still a long way to go. You still can't drive on cannabis in Australia unless you're in Tasmania. So, you can take your opiates and jump in a car and, there's no issues. There's no roadside testing for see if you're on opiates, which can kill you. But obviously the police are actively testing for cannabis and people that just take CBD oil, full spectrum CBD oil, they're not even affected whatsoever by cannabis, but it's still illegal to drive, which seems a bit wrong. So there's a lot of lobbying going on a state level. These are state laws that have to change. I think there's already been bills put up in Queensland and Victoria, maybe New South Wales, about the issues around driving on medicinal cannabis as more and more of the public become medicinal cannabis users. There has to be some sort of, I suppose, leeway on making sure they can still function.
Wow. Where do you start and finish on that discussion? Because, I won't have, actually, I'm not going to start it. You don't know where that goes. There's so many varieties of cannabis. I suppose with alcohol, and I'm not arguing either way. I'm just trying to work my way through that. But with alcohol, you know what a standard drink is, right? Not so much with cannabis because, well, I suppose you will at some point in time. A standard joint or a standard drop of oil equates to...
Yeah, I think it's more about, look, there's a Lambert Institute in New South Wales that have done a recent study on driving on the influence of cannabis versus alcohol, and cannabis definitely comes out a lot better. But cannabis can be dangerous if you're on high THC cannabis and you get behind the wheel straight after you've smoked it or vaped it or taken it as an edible or whatever, it's probably not that safe. But there's a period where that effect drops off rapidly and, so it's probably, having the correct mechanisms in the future to be able to monitor what, just like they do with 0.05 driving. I think there's a bit of way to go there with society understanding the effects of cannabis. But look, at the moment in Australia, you can't have anything at all in your blood. So, it'd be good to see those laws change and allow people that are on prescriptions to sort of do the same thing that they do with opiates, that they shouldn't drive or, operate machinery when they're affected by it. But once they're not affected by it, they should be allowed to get behind the wheel like any other medicine. And, it shouldn't be unfairly picked on in that regard. But it still is today. So, yes, there's a lot of people, I suppose, have their livelihoods affected because they're a medicinal cannabis patient. They might be a truck driver or a taxi driver, and then it takes away their livelihood. So I think we need to see things change in society around that fairly quickly.
Thanks for taking us inside what is a pretty new industry. I've done this, you'll be about my 610th interview or thereabouts. And, You know, it's not often you get to speak to someone who has launched into a brand new industry in Australia, and it's exciting. And I look forward to sort of seeing how it develops over the coming, really, literally the coming months, not even years, because I imagine the change is so quick.
Yeah, look, it's definitely maturing. We're seeing huge volumes of patients. The demand out there is just growing month on month, and we think it's part of society now. It's here to stay, and as a new industry, it's obviously going to create a lot of new employment, new taxes.
Do you think we're going to see the same thing around psilocybin?
I think psilocybin will evolve like cannabis. That's still Schedule 9. It's still very difficult to even do research on psilocybin in this country. So I think that will head in a similar direction. A lot of these natural medicines are sort of coming to the forefront, and, it probably won't be that long.
Is Releaf as a brand, I mean, I suppose it's about leaf, so I think I'm answering my own question, but is Releaf as a brand open to bringing, mushrooms in as another medicine?
Yeah, look, I mean, most definitely. Look, a big part of our retail business is medicinal mushrooms, therapeutic mushrooms. We obviously can't do psilocybin, but, mushrooms as a natural food, it is healthy. And, and I do see with all this research going on with psilocybin in the future, that could be part of our mental health program. Cannabis and psilocybin can probably live in a similar space. So, I do think, we'll see that industry around, medicinal mushrooms sort of emerge over the next 5 to 10 years as well.
Awesome, buddy. Everyone, you can go and check out what Gary's up to, reliefflinics.com.au. I'd also encourage you to follow him on LinkedIn, because if you want to stay up to date on developments and innovation in the industry, then he's a good source of information. Hey, Gary, thanks for sharing, buddy.
Thanks a lot, Timbo. Appreciate the opportunity to chat about Releaf, and look forward to chatting again at some point. Maybe we can see how things are going in another 12 months' time.
Like I said, not necessarily an episode full of business insights, but it's very clear he's a business owner who deeply believes in his product. And that's got to be a good thing. Let me know what your big takeaway from that chat was by calling the Small Business Big Marketing hotline on 0480 015 150, just like jam maker and long-time listener Amy Simpson did.
Hi, Timbo. My name's Amy Simpson, and I started a business called Paddington's Jams and Sauces. I started it during COVID during the first lockdown, as a way of trying to keep myself entertained, I suppose. And started it, just registered it as a little hobby business, and since then it's just taken off. So 2 years later, I'm now in a really exciting point. I've just enlisted a contract manufacturer to do all of my cooking, because I just physically could not keep up. And I'm now in about 20 retail stores, mainly in Brisbane, because that's where I am, but just started going to New South Wales and to Victoria as well. I've got a couple of big retailers on board. Probably the biggest one is Biome Eco Stores. So the point of difference, I guess, with my jams and sauces is their traditional flavours with a little bit of a contemporary twist. So, for instance, my latest one is my rose gin jam, and that is super popular. Just entered into a local show, won whole heap of awards. So I'm just in this really exciting point now, but I got to a point where I feel as though I'm trying everything, because I just want to test everything out and see what works. And I've just listened to your conversation with Tom from Emma and Tom, and he was absolutely the perfect person for me to listen to hear what I needed to hear right now. And the biggest takeaway for me was keep the main thing the main thing. And it is so true. I need to just knuckle down, focus on my product, on what is working really well, sticking to my brand, and just keep on cracking on. So I really needed that to be re-inspired, and it was exactly what I needed. So thank you, Timbo and Tombo. I really appreciate it, and I love the podcast, and I'll keep on listening in. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Hey, Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to leave that voicemail. I do love hearing from excited business owners, and you are one of them. You are the reason I do this podcast. And my pleasure on behalf of myself and Tombo, episode 591, Tom Griffith from Emma and Tom's Juices. That was a fantastic ep about how to build a global brand people love. And his advice about keeping the main thing, yeah, I like that too. One point of focus and do it really, really well. Hey, everyone else, be like Amy and call me on 0480 015 150. If you're overseas, just put a +61 in front and then dial 480 015 150. And let me know one idea you've implemented from one of the episodes of this podcast. 0480 015 150. Got some great guests coming your way in the coming weeks. Won't tell you who. I'm going to keep that as a bit of a surprise this time around. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button on your favourite podcast app where you'll find 606 more chats with successful business founders. The show was stitched together by the fantastic Alex Amster. The music bed written, sung and produced by our very own Lockie Doley, the Harmond keyboard player extraordinaire. Thanks for tuning in. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.